it's really, really important to regard business messaging as something not just for large organizations. When we travel around the world, when we attend numerous conferences, there seems to be a huge focus on large organizations. We talk about business messaging for large banks, large retailers. But at the end of the day, and we heard about this from Nick Lane, there's a huge percentage of businesses out there, perhaps 80 or even 90% of organizations out there not using business messaging already. And this is what the focus of the session today is about. It's about looking at business messaging and the importance of it for smaller and medium-sized organizations. Indeed, how to integrate it in a frictionless way. Now, this session is kindly sponsored by Intis Telecom. Intis Telecom is a business messaging provider that's been around since 2010 and is focused on delivering content, whether it be marketing, transactional, or informative, for small and medium-sized enterprises. They've had a great success in Russia and CIS countries with about 3,000 customers, and have now moved over here to Europe and indeed spreading to Africa and other nations around the world. So thank you very much, Intis Telecom, for sponsoring the session. Now, today's session, I'm going to be joined by 6 people from around the industry. And first up, I'd like to call up Etienne Dupont, who manages everything business messaging related for Rakuten Fiber. Etienne, a pleasure that you could join me. Thank you very much.
Thanks,
great.
James. I'm pleased to be here too.
No problem at all. Fab. Really, really great. And next up, Brian Darcy, who is the Group Chief Commercial Officer of Anam Technologies. Hey, Brian. Hi.
Hi, everyone. Hi, James. How are you? Nice to meet you. Nice to be here.
Yeah, fantastic. Great that you could be here. Next up, we have Milorad Mitrovic, who is the VP of Global Sales for Mitto.
Hi, all. Nice
Milorad, great that you could join us.
Excited to be here.
Nice. And next up, we have Nick Millward, who is the VP for Europe for mGage.
Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. Good morning.
Hey, Nick. Hi. Great that you could join. And we have Ira Cohen, who is VP of Sales and Marketing for MMDSmart. Hey, Ira.
Hi, guys. Great to be here.
Fantastic. Great seeing you, Ira. And finally, we'll be having soon Larissa Ryndik, who is the Procurement and Routing Director of Intis Telecom. Having a couple of problems joining at the moment, but Larissa will be joining us imminently. Now, to get us started, let's just set the scene. If we're looking around the world and we're looking at businesses, and you're talking to the average person on the street, it's really easy for them to have this perception that the majority of people are actually employed by government organizations, by large businesses. And indeed, if you're thinking about potential new jobs coming into the market, we hear about large organizations hiring a ton of new people. If you think about what's been happening in the past year, the likes of Amazon and other companies that have really pivoted and had to move rapidly and transform themselves and move online have hired a lot of people. But we'd actually be wrong. It's the smaller, medium-sized organizations that are bringing most new employees into the workplace as a whole. So, Etienne, I would actually like to start with you. I'm just talking about business messaging as a whole. When we talk about business messaging, what are we actually talking about? What channels have we got to play with within them?
Yeah, to keep it simple first, let's try to represent what is business messaging. So by business messaging is the capacity and the capability for brands to have a one-to-one discussions on chat with its customers. So obviously, naturally, on messaging app like us, like Vibers, we have been one of the pioneers to launch a business messaging solutions on our app. But there are other apps in the market that are also managing business messaging, like WhatsApp, like Messengers, or Telegram, or if you go in Asia, it can be WeChat or Line. So it really depends on which hub is market leaders in which countries to help you selecting the right business messaging. And for business messaging, so I mean it's a nice tool to create for brands a warm and fluffy relationship with its customers, but knowing it's called business messaging, brands need to keep in mind that they need to have the drivers to send their message and have these conversations, and to have a real business objective to create conversions, to nurture the relationships, but to go just beyond than hello and how are you, obviously.
Absolutely. So it has to be all-encompassing. Now, Milorad, we hear a lot about something called omnichannel. Could you just explain what omnichannel is for the viewer who may not have heard about it?
True. It's a big topic now. Everybody's talking about it. But in general, omnichannel is basically enabling enterprises to communicate with their end users through the right channel at the right time. So it's basically combining all the channels out there, going from voice, SMS, chat apps like they were just mentioned, WhatsApp, Viber, Line, and etc. It could be push notification. It could be online chat bots as well. So it basically encompasses all types of communication.
Yeah, I think it's about bringing them all seamlessly together, and that's the hard bit. That is the really hard bit, and
that's
I think
exactly
we've got a
we're
session.
all trying to get to.
Yeah, we've got a session at the end of the day, actually, where that's one of the questions put to the jury, talking about omnichannel indeed. Also pleased to bring now to the conversation Larissa Ryndik, who is the Procurement and Routing Director of Intis Telecom. Larissa, great that you could join us. Hi.
Hello everyone. Sorry for
Hello.
being late.
No problem. You're here, and that's the main thing. So we're all here now. A very, very eclectic mix of people from totally different countries. So you're in Russia, you have Russia represented, Ira, who's clearly having a few Wi-Fi difficulties in Israel at the moment. We've got Milorad in Serbia, Etienne in France, Brian in Ireland, and myself and Nick in the UK. So very, very eclectic mix. Now in Russia, business messaging, SMS. Do people like their SMS in Russia and the CIS?
Well, it actually depends because, we don't receive a lot of marketing text messages now. So it's mostly service information about your orders, deliveries, and that is very convenient to receive these kind of notifications and reminders via SMS. So people actually get used to it and they really like it.
But when you mentioned marketing, they don't receive as many messages now. Does that mean they did, and for some reason that stopped because there was too much spam or something like that?
Yes, like 10 years ago, we received more marketing messages, but then the market got more regulated by mobile operators and other authorities. There were some law changes, so it actually made end customers, retail companies, to care more about all these things, and in general, they send less marketing messages. Somehow, maybe it's not really that efficient now because people don't really want to receive them that much.
Okay, well, I think it's safe to see when we look at what Nick Lane was talking about this morning, indeed, and generally around the world, you can't generalize what's going on. You can't say, for example, SMS or business messaging is super strong across all the use cases around the world in one way, shape, or form. And that's very, very clear from Larissa's experience, indeed Intis Telecom's experience today in Russia. So the marketing side of things is strong, but the transactional thing reigns absolutely supreme. It's absolutely here to see. Now,
maybe if I could jump in there, James, because
go ahead, Brian.
I think it's important to maybe just differentiate. So if you look at 5-10 years ago, maybe some of the markets it was a free for all. So pricing was very low. And I'm not talking about Russia specifically, just a general observation. Pricing was very low. Networks were open. it was very easy to send as many messages as you want, which in effect might have been spam. And I think what's happened in the last, over time, and certainly it's the case now, is that more networks have put proper infrastructure in place, firewalls, to protect their interests, which means there's a price. So a lot of the kind of noise which maybe infuriated the networks, but also infuriated the recipient, has been addressed. So I think that's a good thing, and I think that's probably a good step for the market to become more mature, because obviously business messaging has a value, but spam, fraud, and noise has the opposite effect. It can actually take from the opportunity.
100%. And as we know, all of us know in this session at the moment, if that takes over, then of course it can devalue a particular channel under SMS. Now, Ira, I'd like to bring you into the conversation because you work personally with a lot of enterprises. I know you write a lot of content around messaging, indeed for SMEs as well. Let's talk about the myths around messaging and people thinking business messaging isn't for small organizations. What's the number one myth that you think of exists out there that's totally incorrect and needs to be busted?
Well, let's look at this conversation we're having today. I think the first myth is that SMS is the only type of business messaging that exists. We sometimes seem to forget that business messaging actually started with email. And if we were talking about spam, well, that channel has basically gone down the drain because it was misused, it was abused, and we all know the low open rates for email today. But when a small enterprise looks at how they're going to connect with their customers, they say, okay, I need to get their email addresses so I can start sending them emails. And that obviously is not a great way to go because it may be very, very seemingly inexpensive to send lots of emails to your customers, but your ROI or your return from that or your ability to convert those potential customers into actual customers is not going to be very, very great. And so the value of email messaging to a small business is very low. What we as an industry haven't done as well, and we've spoken about this at length, I think, over the last few years, is promote the value that business messaging has across all the different use cases and across all the different types of verticals and types of customers that we have. It's already been mentioned that there's a dichotomy between transactional messaging and promotional messaging. Well, the holy grail, everybody wants to get the Google, the Facebooks, the Amazons, transactional messaging because that's fantastic traffic, it's fairly stable, and it's a lot. So you can get great prices from vendors and networks. But as has also been mentioned, 90% of the companies in the world are not Google, Amazon, Facebook, or those big corporations. They're your mom and pop shops around the corners. They're companies with 150, 200 employees. They may only do $10 million a year, $20 million a year, or $50 million a year. They're not these huge corporations, but they have a lot of business needs that effective messaging to their customers can help with. And we've seen particularly during this past year, during the coronavirus, those were the business sectors that particularly suffered. They had to learn to do curbside pickups, and they had to learn how to communicate with their customers because their physical storefronts were not open. Their customers weren't coming in anymore. How do you maintain that relationship with your customers? How do you try and sell, but at the same time be empathetic with your customers who are undergoing a terrible crisis in their lives, in their personal lives, in their financial well-being? And so we've been advocating to that, particularly to those smaller businesses, about how business messaging, using an effective messaging strategy, can help them communicate with their customers to help keep that relationship ongoing even during a time of crisis. And the companies that manage to implement a successful business messaging strategy during this crisis, those are the companies that are going to survive and flourish going forward. And we've been able to prove that through many, many use cases, and we've shown how those companies that did that, now that we're starting slowly in parts of the world to come out of the crisis, those are the companies that have a strong customer base. They have fantastic relation with their customers. Their customers are looking forward to that attempt to renew that physical relationship.
Okay, so that's the first thing. The first myth is it's just one channel only. It's multiple channels and even a small organization can bring multiple channels into play at one time, their customer engagement. I'd like to bring Nick Millward, VP Europe for mGage, into the conversation. Hi, Nick.
Hi, James.
Hello.
Maybe we should...
Sorry, go ahead. Ira, did you have something to say to finish off?
Maybe we should add to that the myth for those smaller companies is that they perceive SMS as being a lot more complicated than email. They say, oh no, this is too complicated. I don't have the technical capability to do this. I don't know how to build up a mobile database of numbers that I can use. And it's upon us as an industry to make it much easier for them.
100%.
Okay.
I think, Nick, Ira may have just done your homework for you then, because I was going to come to you with another myth that you think needs to be busted for all enterprises out there in relation to business messaging. What springs to mind for you?
Well, I think to add to, excuse me, to what Ira was just saying, I think there is also a myth around price as well. So I think there's this this perception that email's free and SMS isn't. And we have similar conversations with WhatsApp's free, but SMS isn't. So I think, the conversation that you can get into the brand very easily to kind of change that perception is obviously looking at things like return on investment. And, when you look at it more holistically, email isn't free, neither is WhatsApp, neither are some of these other channels. And obviously it's, with SMS, there is a hard cost associated. We all pay the operators and other routing partners, etc. So, I think that for me is a myth, from a sales perspective, a myth that kind of needs busting, that, that there is a cost-effective way to add SMS into the portfolio and other business messaging that has return on investment. And it's kind of interesting. I mean, just a straw poll, I won't mention any brand names, but I look at some of the clients that we have, and they've been cited in the press at being, if you like, those top companies that have really kind of succeeded over the last 18 months. And I don't think it's just because of business messaging. I think it's a range of things, but I think business messaging is in that mix with a whole bunch of other tech, which kind of allows these businesses to prosper. And it's not just enterprises, it's certainly, across the board, from small, medium up to enterprise as well.
Thanks, Nick. It's at this point, actually, I'd like to bring in Etienne, because Nick raised a very, very good point. If you're thinking about chat apps such as Viber or WhatsApp, WeChat, it could be any of them like that. From a person-to-person perspective, they're free. And there's this mindset that they're free. And when it comes to a business proposition, I know you clearly have a rich proposition with Rakuten Viber, with your business messaging solution. How do you find it, particularly when you're thinking of pushing this out to smaller and medium-sized enterprises? And obviously you're talking about the pricing model. How does that come across? And is there the understanding that, yes, it is something that requires an investment?
I mean, yes, it requires some investment because it's the solution is not free. But first of all, what you need to know is at Viber's 90% of the business message channels belong to SMBs on Viber's. So it's definitely not a myth that it's a good solution for SMBs, and any company from any size can take advantage of it. I mean, from a technical standpoint, they don't have any integration to manage. They need to connect with one of our certified messaging partners. They can get the list on our Viber for Business website. They can see which countries are operating, which languages are managing, etc. And then they get in touch with them, with our partners, and they can connect on the interface, set up their message, and manage their conversation. So from a technical point of view, I don't think there is a big blocker. From a price point of view, we try to come up with a rate card that is the same for all our messaging partners, and where we are having and maintaining a cost efficient pricing. And from different case studies and from different client feedback, our solution is efficient in this way, where whatever they're sending promotional or transactional message, they have the result they are looking for in terms of conversions. For instance, when you come to sending coupons, etc., you are doing it by emails. 90% of the case, the email will fall into spam. The CTR will be very low, etc. While when you do the same on business message and in Vibers, you can get some first a much higher read percentage from 60 to 90%, depending on the channel, on the country. The CTR will be much higher, from 15 to up 40%, depending on the action item. So the channel is very efficient for SMBs, and they don't need to have hundreds of thousands of clients to start using it, and they can start smaller, start with a few type of message they want to send, and see how they want to extend it and manage more automated solution. So it can really they can have a step-by-step onboarding to avoid them also to manage a big integration or a big investment from the very beginning.
Thank you, Etienne. Larissa, I'd like to bring yourself into the conversation. So just take any business out there on the street. How easy is it for them to take advantage of business messaging? What do they actually need to do to be able to get starting sending SMS and perhaps using channels like Viber as well? How easy is it?
Well, it actually depends. As Ira mentioned already, we need to make the process really very easy for everyone, so they understand how to create their SMS campaign, how to make it efficient. And not everyone, unfortunately, understand it. And even some customers even don't test it in a proper way. So we need to teach them. And how to use it, how to use all the tools, how to track like your messages, how to do everything, basically, how to estimate the efficiency of your SMS campaign, and how to make it more efficient in general. And as for Viber, let's say not everyone is ready to use it because of the prices, because of the volumes. As far as I know, you need to have a certain volume of messages per month to use Viber, and not everyone is ready for this.
Etienne, just bring you in on this. Is that true?
I mean, we have some pricing. Pricing model. We also set up some minimum volume commitment per month, but the conditions actually are better than what they looks like, because from the minimum conditions, it's an investment of 100 euros per month that the brand can stop anytime he wants. So at the moment he's not using the channel, he can put it in pause and relaunch it in the future. The ideas on our side was a way to avoid brands creating multiple channels at the same time, because I'm sending one message ahead, and from a user perspective, it was creating actually it was damaging not only the user experience for us, but also for the brand, because they would have received 10 messages from the same brand from 10 different channels. And the ideas of a business messaging channel on Viber is to have a unified channels from the brands where you are going to receive and collect all your messages, and not having like on SMS, for instance, possible multiple channels with the same entity.
Fantastic. Okay, now that's very, very clear. Thank you for clarifying that. If I can just go back to Larissa again. Hi, Larissa. So actually, for me, if I'm a small business, how fast can I sign up to a solution, for example, from yourselves, Intis Telecom, and get sending SMS? How fast is it?
It's really very fast. You just need to sign up for the services with your email and your name, your company name, and that's it. And well, you just top up your balance and send your messages. Of course, we ask our clients to provide us with some information, so you need to tell us a bit more about your about what kind of messages you're going to send. But in general, technically, you just need to sign up and top up your balance.
Fantastic. That's it. So it's really easy, it's really clean and easy to access. Now, Miller, I'd like to come back to you. So we've heard, if you're thinking of email, obviously it's free. But if you're talking to smaller businesses who may not understand, because there's the big educational aspect here, across the whole industry, in fact, but really on smaller enterprises, getting the message across that, yes, there's going to be an investment and it's definitely going to reap rewards. How do you teach your customers about how they actually go about measuring their return on investment? Do you have really easy tools? Do you make it super easy for them to see exactly what return on investment they have? What would you recommend?
I have to admit, it's been a lot easier for us to, let's say, communicate and teach the larger enterprises on this. The small ones the SMBs are extremely difficult to, let's say, pass this information on to them. They're tight on resources. They're trying to grow quickly. They don't have finances. So in general, it's been very difficult. And of course, there's only so much effort, to educate something. You need to be, let's say, doing it face to face, and it doesn't make business, it's not scalable for us to be investing human resources to educate people. So I think this teaching the SMBs has to fall onto the, let's say, the marketing side, having various marketing material out there, videos. In general, SMBs will go onto YouTube and watch a video clip and learn all about how things work, and then they make their decision, right? So I think when it comes to that, we should, it falls on that part, not on the actual salespeople themselves.
Okay, thank you. But Brian, I'd like to bring you in. You're obviously at Anam Technologies focused heavily on the monetization, but really security of business messaging at the end of the day. And when I think of security, I don't just think of security from the end user perspective, from the mobile subscriber perspective, but also I think of it from the enterprise perspective. What do smaller businesses need to understand about how secure channels like SMS are, and what should they do? How should they go about protecting themselves and their customers?
Yeah, so maybe if I just kind of just to one point from the previous conversations is, so Anam, we work with roughly about 80 mobile operators around the world, so we kind of get a good view on messaging in general, and on average, the kind of domestic or SME traffic would be 4 or 5 times, maybe even more, in terms of volume than the international. So it was said at the start that everybody looks at the large kind of international company who's buying vast volumes of messages. So, I think there's a good foundation there for the kind of local SME, and we're starting to see growth in those areas. And I think certainly in the last while we've started to see growth. And then there's also there was a conversation around the return on investment and cost. In most countries now, maybe with the exception of Europe, but in most countries, pricing for kind of local domestic SMEs is lower than the international players. So there's a lot going for the domestic user to use these services. They've shown that they've taken them on, and then they've got a cost advantage or a price advantage. In terms of, for any channel, the channel has to have integrity. If it doesn't, very quickly it starts to go wrong. And in the past we've seen scenarios of that where there's been phishing and different things, particularly in the financial services, where banks have kind of moved away or they've kind of used alternative authentication methods. But the good news here is that a lot of work and a lot of effort has gone in by the industry to install firewalls to protect mobile networks and to try and eliminate the fraudulent traffic. So that's obviously a good thing. And then there's continuous development, and that space is evolving all the time. So now you have, for example, the MEF code of conduct. How companies should perform and how they should operate, and best practice, and companies are signing up to those terms. You also have vendor benchmarking. So within our space, the firewall side, you've got companies like Roco who do vendor benchmarking, fairly comprehensive vendor benchmarking every year in terms of who is deemed to be a good firewall. I'm glad to say we did well on that. So I think to start, the first part of your question is the mobile operators have invested a lot. Now there's more to do, and fraud is evolving all the time. I thought Nick Lane's presentation this morning was very interesting. He talked about potentially only 2.2% of enterprise, or sorry, SMEs are using messaging. So if you think that the large international players are active today, the domestic people today are doing, or the SMEs are doing 4 or 5 times that volume. And Nick says that only 2.2% of the industry are actually using messaging. It shows that there is a phenomenal opportunity. And I think, but with that opportunity will also come added threats. So with money follows opportunists. So look, I think for the SME who's looking to get into this space, it's one is you can look at countries and you can see, are those on a whole, are those networks in those countries protected? You would look at pricing. Again, everybody wants to pay nothing, but if you pay nothing, you're generally going to get a pretty poor quality of service. So you've got to have some realization of a fair price, and then obviously working with companies who have direct connections or quality connections to the operators where you want to terminate. Would be some of the things you would do.
Thanks. Thank you very much, Brian. Nick, now I'd like to come back to you. Nick from mGage, VP of Europe for mGage. Just extending on from that, that's looking at security for the SMBs themselves on the channel. But there are so many business messaging companies around the world. There are quite literally thousands. Of course, many of the larger ones are represented during this event, and many people like yourself from the larger companies are indeed speaking at the event. But if, let's say, I wanted to set up my own business messaging company, how would I go about ensuring that all the traffic I'm aggregating downstream is secure? What measures would I have to take to ensure everything I'm routing onwards is secure?
You've given me the hard question, haven't you, James?
Yeah. Because it's not just the businesses or the subscribers that've got to watch out. The industry's got to do their thing as well. Yeah.
Well, I'm afraid I'm not actually the expert in this area. But I mean, if I were to start my own messaging business, I'd say good luck. I think it is a very diluted market at the moment, very difficult. I think, where we're coming from is certainly looking at some of the new technologies that are coming out in business messaging. I think in terms of security, there's a lot of work that we do with MEF, making sure that sender IDs are kept kind of secure and on the right kind of whitelist, blacklists. Some of our clients certainly have issues when, their customers are receiving messages that aren't actually from them. So I think the initiatives that MEF are running are very important for the industry. I'm not just saying that as it's certainly not a preloaded question because I'm on a MEF call. I do think this is important. But I think as well, obviously, we've got aggregators where you can route traffic over what's traditionally called as a grey route. And that, again, in my experience, some of those grey routes are potentially offering much better quality over the years than they were previously. However, if you want the guarantees, you want the right SLAs in place, you have to secure contractually an agreement to connect either through an L1 such as us to connect directly into the carriers, to get that. And because obviously we have back-to-back agreements, with the carriers. I mean, apart from, some of the work that we're doing within RCS, where, you have verification within RCS, so you kind of have the shield with the tick in there that validates that particular brand. I know Google are doing their verified SMS solutions. I'm probably not better placed to give too much more information than that on security. No,
that's fine. Thank you, Nick. If we go to Milorad now from Mitto. Hey, Milorad.
Hey.
A lot is made of the importance of customizing content. And if we roll back the clock, many of us will have heard of the term bulk SMS in the days when SMS, the same content was sent out to a mailing list without being personalized or anything like that. How easy is it for SMBs to tailor content to the individual, to certain groups, in reality?
In reality, it's becoming a lot easier than it used to be. Everything is API based, and people are very savvy when it comes to that. So it's quite easy to customize content that you deliver. What's interesting is there's tons of platforms, and we're all offering these platforms that enable SMBs to pick and choose the channel they use and then actually customize the message content of each one of those. So at the moment, I see this as a very, let's say, easy and readily available opportunity for SMBs to directly approach the customer with a custom message. Bulk messaging to me is, I personally don't like that term. It makes it sound like spam, and I'm kind of allergic to that term. Because I don't know. From my side, it makes no sense to call bulk messaging. It should all be customized nowadays.
Totally agree, 100% on that. So, Ira, you're back. Hey, I'll come to you. So, just heard from Milorad that nowadays it's fairly easy for people by people I'm talking about small and medium-sized businesses, to customize their content. How much more impact does it actually have?
My internet is going out.
Can you hear me, Ira? You okay? Yeah? Okay, Ira. So I'll move away from Ira. Go to Larissa. If we come to you, please. Sorry. Back to Intis Telecom, Larissa in Kazan, Russia. Hi, Larissa. So
Hi.
Question to you. From what you've seen, because I know you've worked with a ton of companies over the past several years with Intis Telecom, how much more valuable does it make their content if the business personalizes it?
Well, I totally agree with Milorad. Messages must be personalized, and so that's actually one of the criteria of spam messages. As for me, I really don't like messages then we are not personalized, and you also can not only put your like a name of your customer into the text, but also make some personalized links, for example, so you can track each of your clients and see who of them actually clicked the link and what they did, and maybe they all will have some kind of personal offer by clicking on this link.
Okay, so it's really, really easy, and clicking the links there. Now we have a question from Luna Sena, and asks, what are the main points that small businesses are hesitant about regarding SMS? And indeed, how can we, Meth, I'm actually going to open that up to other trade bodies, the industry. What can we do to overcome that? So the hesitancy. Ira, hesitancies about SMS, because we've heard it numerous times. Some people are saying, don't use SMS for two-factor authentications. But then we've already heard on a number of panels today, no, huge amount of SMS traffic is 2FA related. And people absolutely should use SMS. So there's this conflict. And at the end of the day, if you're a small organization, you don't know which direction to turn to. What do you say? Ira, you're on mute.
Still on mute.
Still on mute. There we go.
No,
You're good.
I'm not.
Carry on. Carry on.
I was talking to myself, and it sounded great, so that's why I was happy. But I think that one of the main things is about education, which was mentioned earlier. We actually spent a tremendous amount of time this past year and a half educating for the SME organizations. We have videos about how easy it is to get started and how easy to set up an account and build a mobile database. And the fact of the matter is that we actually have another project about for securing SMS traffic. And one of the main things to understand is that hackers are not really interested in the smaller businesses. They're interested in the big businesses and the PayPals and the HSBCs and the Citibanks of the world. That's where it makes sense for them to put efforts into hacking SMS traffic. So really, for smaller businesses, the risk of that happening is not that great. But SMS, as was said, is there are billions of transactions. There are billions of messages going out every hour. The amount of fraud from there is very, very, very small. It's tiny. There are ways to secure the channel, as mentioned before. There are firewalls in order to prevent piracy and hacking into personal accounts. But again, if I'm a small e-commerce retailer and I read stuff on the internet, I'm going to be very hesitant about using this for authenticating my customers. And so in the end, it's about education. We have a team of messaging specialists, and that's their job. Their job is to work with smaller businesses to educate them about what are the rewards and what are the risks, to make sure that they're perfectly aware about how the channel operates and how to make the most out of the channel for their particular business case. So I'd say number one is education. Number two is being totally transparent about the rewards and the risks. And number three, making sure that we're promoting the value properly. I know this is my mantra for the last couple of years, but the value always outstrips the potential risk. And if they understand the tremendous value of having great conversations and dialogues and intimate relationships with their customers, they begin to understand that the risk is nowhere near the potential reward.
Ira, thank you very much. Now, I'm going to have to start to begin this session up fairly soon. So I'm just going to put myself in the shoes of, actually, every one of you panelists, put yourself in the shoes of an SMB. What questions, what things does that SMB need to think of when they're trying to find the best business messaging provider for themselves? And I'll start with Etienne from Rakuten Viber. Where does this business start, Etienne? Because there's so much competition.
Obviously they should do a small market study regarding like which apps are available in the markets, which solutions are available in the market, which are the ones that their clients are using in majority, what are the USPs of each messaging app or other messaging solutions are providing, and what type of message am I going to be able to send, and based on this they can match their objective with the solutions and the channels that will fit with the objective. There are some messaging solutions that are only doing transactional. Some are doing two ways. Some are doing promotional. Some are doing the three of us like us. So it can already first help them to know exactly which solution they decide, and then I would say, and particularly for SMBs, to start with a more step-by-step approach, as I was saying, because we know that there are some resource limitations. They know there are potential some integration limitations and some resource and budget limitations. So they can test, see how it works, how much efficient it is, start sending with a couple type of message and expand it directly. In terms of other questions is what are the type of conversation I want to have? I want to have there with my customers. If it's only one way, just for pure information, or if I want to do a bit further and go to a more conversational mode, which will request them a bit of a bit of work because they will need to have a kind of support system, to handle the conversations. But at the end of the day, can be very beneficial because from different market studies, consumers tend to really like these business conversations, and as long as they are customized, they will also get a very strong added value for their brands and to get their customers loyal to their brand.
Etienne, thank you very much. Milorad, quickly cut back to you. What would you say to any SMB looking to find the right business messaging provider for them?
So I guess three things. Ease of use. As an SMB, you don't have much resources to invest, so it has to be a solution that's easy for them to use. They're usually looking for consulting services and compliance, so they don't have the time to figure out where they're compliant and where they're breaking the law or not breaking the law. So this is where we need to help them out. And the third is like the complete solution. The SMBs need to provide a communication channel depending on what their customer expects. And that could be a variety. That could be SMS, that could be WhatsApp, Viber, Telegram, or email. It could be all of those, and it should be all of those at the same time. So
yeah, thank you.
Somebody has to provide the complete.
Yeah, that's very clear. Nick, I'd like to come back to you. So very, very quickly, because we're going to be finishing up very, very soon. But if you were to give the business messaging industry a grade with how they are doing at helping service messaging for SMBs, what grade would it be? How would you grade the homework? And what's the number one thing that needs to be corrected, you think, to help get these 80 or 90% of organizations who aren't using messaging on actually using it?
I think a grade is probably 2 out of 5, something like that. And I come back to something Milorad says, probably the return for us as businesses to do that, with individual small businesses is not cost effective. We personally won't get a return on that. I think there's an elephant in the room we haven't covered, which is the kind of Twilio model. A lot of these small companies are outsourcing a lot of what they do to marketing and to tech, right? And these companies are the ones that are using the likes of Twilio, Nextmode to do, an automated API connection. Those developers will go there first. So I think that's something we need to consider. We need to kind of break into that mold as well. But I think to answer, some previous questions, I think ease of connection, service, price, and demonstrate ROI. Those are the 4 things I would say that you need to do to encourage somebody to use business messaging, in my experience.
You have a lot of experience. Yeah. So thank you very much. I think our panel, we could continue discussing this topic for a very, very long time, but our time together, I think, has come to an end for the moment. So I'd like to thank Larissa from Kazan. Thank you very much for joining us. Etienne from Rakuten Viber, Brian Darcy from Anam Technologies, Ira Cohen from MMDSmart, Milorad Mitrovic from Mitto, and indeed Nick Millward from mGage. Thank you all so much for joining me on this sponsored session. And it's clear for all to see that SMB's business messaging is for you. It absolutely is. And it's a case of educating yourself. And there are plenty of companies out there that are catering for businesses. No matter what your size is, there is someone that will meet your messaging needs. So thank you again, panelists. And I look forward to seeing you, hopefully in person. Perhaps not this year, let's say 2022, realistically. All the best. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.